Good afternoon. My name is Zakano Cummins, and this is my Week 7 Media Video Summary. It consists of Dr. Valley Maddie Curriculum's video. He presents Haggai as a short, urgent, post-exilic prophetic call to reorder priorities, which are to rebuild the temple, repent, and trust God's promise of presence and future blessings. He frames Haggai as a two-chapter, tightly dated set of oracles delivered in 520 BC that addresses a discouraged, distracted community after the return from exile. He emphasizes the book's immediate pastoral purpose to confront complacency about the temple and to renew communal commitment to worship. So let's look at some key points that we should emphasize in this video. Haggai speaks during the Persian period when the people had delayed rebuilding the Lord's house. The reframe, consider your ways, appears 4 times in the book, and it is central to the call to reorient priorities. Haggai rebukes neglect, but also promises God's presence, a shaking of the nations, and the future glory for the rebuilt temple. Let's look at Zerubbabel's motif. Curriculum highlights Zerubbabel as a focal, encouraging figure, both a practical leader and a theological sign of God's sovereign action. Let's look at some structure and interpretive moves. Curriculum notes Haggai's oracles are delivered in a single season and organized as a sequence of exhortation, promise, and practical instruction. He stresses that the ritual fidelity, which is the temple rebuilding, and everyday ethics, such as priorities and provision, are connected. So the community's material hardship is read as a link to the neglect of God's house. Let's look at some theological implications and application. God's presence is at the heart's book, and curriculum reads Haggai's promise, I am with you, as the theological pivot that turns the rebuke into hope. God always turns the rebuke into hope, especially when we turn back to Him. He urges contemporary listeners to examine priorities, invest in communal worship and services, and trust for God's restoration. Reading Haggai as both a historical and pastoral applicable book that we can use in today's time. Now let's switch gears. Dr. Gary Yates' lecture on Malachi presents the book as a short, post-exilic disputation-style prophecy that rebukes priestly and popular unfaithfulness. It calls for covenantal renewal, which consists of worship, tithing, and marital fidelity, and it closes with an eschatological promise of judgment and a coming forerunner. So let's look at the scope. Yates delivers this material as the final session in a series of the Book of the 12, treating Malachi as the capstone of the minor prophets and situating it within the post-exilic restoration period. He uses the book's internal dates and rhetorical form to anchor his exposition. So Yates emphasizes Malachi's dialogic pattern, which is a divine charge, the people's skeptical question, and the prophet's rebuttal. This question and answer structure is central to how the book exposes specific abuses and corrects theological misunderstandings. Yates reads Malachi against the backdrop of the restored temple and a community whose initial zeal has waned. The prophet addresses real, local, cultic, and social problems. The lecture opens with the book's affirmation of God's love for Israel and shows how the claim frames the subsequent indictments. Yates highlights prophets' sharp rebuke priests who offers blemished sacrifices and treats God's name with contempt. Restoring proper worship is a primary concern. Major themes and pastoral application. Yates stresses Malachi's link between material faithfulness, which are bringing full tithes, and communal blessings. You know the famous test me, prove me, try me, and see if I will not open up a window and pour you out blessings enough room to receive. And failure to give is presented as a covenantal unfaithfulness, and it comes with tangible consequences. Then the lecture treats Malachi's condemnation of divorce and mixed marriages as part of a broader call to covenant fidelity and social justice. Then Yates closes by unpacking Malachi's promise of a coming messenger, and this messenger, as we will discover, is John the Baptist, who will prepare the Lord's coming. And the book images of refining judgment and vindication for the righteous. He notes how later Jewish and Christian readers read the lines in light of John the Baptist and the New Testament fulfillment. So some practical takeaways from this lecture is we can identify the legal style indictments and the community's defensive questions. We can look at Yates' model as reading the book to correctly worship and present as everyday moral behavior agents. And those are inseparable. And then the prophet's rebuke is paired with consoling promises, God's presence, and future vindication, an angle Yates stresses for contemporary application. So this concludes my week 7 video summary, and I pray that it blesses your soul. Have a great weekend.